Life may not have some abstract overall meaning, but it certainly has specific ones. This is the third video in my series on Truths for Hard Times. And I wanted to read you a couple of things from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Such a poignant book. And I'm doing this because when I've looked for some authority in people who talk about what life means, I go to the people who have been through real adversity. And I think that that's because of 18 years of child abuse and then losses that I've had since then. So when people who haven't been through a lot talk a lot about the meaning of life and all this, I don't tend to trust them much. I want to hear from the sufferers. And he was certainly one of them. So Frankl was a psychiatrist who was in more than one concentration camp. He saw lots of people die, including colleagues and friends. His wife died in the camps. So when he came out, he wrote an account of his experiences, Man's Search for Meaning, that at first it went under a different title, and it had a small psychological part at the end of it because he wanted to, while he was going through it, imagine this, he wanted to study human nature from the standpoint of his experience in the camps. And then he expanded it a bit. So he's somebody that I want to hear from in terms of what's meaningful about life when you go down that far, all the way down to constant risk of death. So a couple of things I wanted to read you. One had to do with how even in adversity, some people come to a different appreciation of the beauty of nature. So this is what he wrote. But appreciating beauty, by the way, is one way, according to Frankl, that we find meaning in life. So here's what he wrote. As the inner life of the prisoner tended to become more intense, he also experienced the beauty of art and nature as never before. Under their influence, he sometimes forgot his own frightful circumstances. One evening, when we were already resting on the floor of our hut, dead tired, soup bowls in hand, a fellow prisoner rushed in and asked us to run out to the assembly grounds and see the wonderful sunset. Standing outside, we saw sinister clouds glowing in the west and the whole sky alive with clouds of ever-changing shapes and colors, from steel blue to blood red. The desolate gray mud huts provided a sharp contrast, while the puddles on the muddy ground reflected the glowing sky. And then, after minutes of moving silence, one prisoner said to another, "How beautiful the world could be." Such a poignant statement. He also mentions doing art in the camps, that doing art kept some people alive. They had a little cabaret they put together that had some humor in it. Songs, poems, jokes, a bit of satire. And then he says, the gatherings were so effective that a few prisoners went to see the cabaret in spite of their fatigue, even though they missed their daily portion of food by going. And these are people who were starving. So then he says, it is possible to practice the art of living even in a concentration camp, although suffering is omnipresent. And he goes on to criticize these views of human nature that we're nothing more than biology, we're nothing more than circumstances, materialist views that he was always very strongly critical of. And he says, is that theory true, which would have us believe that man is no more than a product of many conditional and environmental factors? Is man but an accidental product of these? The experiences of camp life show that man has choice of action. There were enough examples often of a heroic nature which proved that apathy could be overcome, irritability suppressed. Man can preserve a vestige of spiritual freedom, of independence of mind, even in such terrible conditions. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through The huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that anything can be taken away, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So for Frankl, meaning of life overall in the abstract was a question that didn't have much substance to it. But if we can find something that matters more than we do, that's outside of us, then it can get us through adversity. And I read this in college, and then I became a psychotherapist. I'm not in practice anymore because I switched to full-time education, but there were clients I talked to who were suicidal, who I would do a kind of life inventory with them to find out what really matters to you beyond you. What's still important to you? And so for one person, it might be a child or a friend or some project that they always wanted to do. It varies with the person. But if I could get them to make that link, that thing was calling them, then they wouldn't kill themselves. So Beethoven, as most of us know, lost his hearing at one point, and he was stuck in that understandable psychology of what does life hold for me? Frankl says you got to reverse this. The question isn't what life holds for you. The question is, what is it calling from you? What do you need to do? What are you responsible for? That's the way. So Beethoven realized that. And he understood, you can see this in his letters, his art was more important than his sufferings. So he decided to stay alive and give us art, because art called forth something from him, and he felt responsible to answer. That kept him going. So incidentally, when he died in 1827, he died during a thunderstorm, of course. And he had written early on, I will take fate by the throat. It shall not wholly overcome me. That was the spirit in which he refused to go down. And so at one point, according to the people who were in the room, there was this big blast of thunder, and Beethoven, who was fading fast, made one final gesture, and it was this. What a great way to go.